All right, so I want to go over the most missed questions for Unit 1 test in 2015. The first one is number 7. Which of the following is least characteristic of the history of political parties in the U.S. during the 20th century? So if you look at A through D, those are definitely things that have all been happening on an increasing rate. We have an increasing number of organized interests and the influence of PAC committees, especially with the loopholes that have been allowed into the campaign finance reform and Citizens United, which led to the creation of many super PACs. We do have a state adoption of direct primaries, and we do have a loss of party patronage power. If you trace that back to the early 1900s and the Populist Party and the Progressive Party, those are two reforms from that. However, we have not split the two major parties into a multi-party system. We have an occasional third party, but we do not have a multi-party system. Like if you look at England or Ireland, they have multi-party systems. All right, number 8, candidates for political office use public opinion polls for all the following purposes except 2. They are going to want to check out do people know their name and what are the voters' support for the candidates' issues. A and B are 2 things that public opinion polls and the results of those led to Lincoln Chafee and Jim Webb dropping out. They are going to want to fine-tune their policy stands because, especially as we get closer to the election, they want to make sure that they are reflective of E, which is the key issues among voters, because if you're not paying attention to what issues are important to the voters, then they're not going to vote for you. However, you do not want to bring the opposition's opinions into alignment with those of the candidate, because if you're trying to differentiate yourself from that other candidate and give the voters an alternative to the other candidate, that's why you're not going to bring your opinions into alignment with them. All right, the next one is going to be number 28. All right, so all the following are frequently advocated by liberals, except, remember, liberals and conservatives, that goes across the horizontal axis. Liberals are on the left, that's a Democrat. Liberals like bigger government, more government regulation, more government hands-on, safety net programs, funding for alternative research, strong protection of your civil liberties, which is your protections in Amendments 1 through 8, and then which includes background checks for gun owners. But they do not want privatization of Social Security. That would be taking the Social Security system out of the hands of government and giving it to the people, and that would be making smaller government. Next up, American conservatives, as opposed to liberals, typically believe that we should reduce the budget spending by spending less on military. They do not believe that. They want to increase the spending on military. They should be conducting its foreign policy through multilateral institutions. Nope, they think that they should be unilateral. A lot of conservatives do not think that we should be part of the UN, for an example. If we wanted to bomb Syria, they don't think we should have to go to the UN and talk to them about that. They do not believe that prayer in public schools interferes with students' secular education. Conservatives tend to see more of an intertwining of religion and education as opposed to liberals who see a separation of those two. The government has an obligation to regulate business for the public interest. They do not believe in government regulation of businesses. However, they do think that criminals have been accorded due process rights to an excessive degree. First of all, that's bigger government. Second of all, they feel like it hampers law enforcement's ability to do their job. So for an example, the decisions in Mapp versus Ohio, Miranda versus Arizona, Gideon versus Wainwright, Escobedo versus Illinois have all increased the rights of the accused, according to them, at the detriment of law enforcement's ability to do their job. All right, next up is going to be number 37. The party platform is developed. Many of you put by the platform committee at the National Party Convention. The problem is you have to look at the word developed. It may be finalized at the party convention, but it wouldn't be developed 2 months before the election. We've already gone through 8 months of primaries. So that's why it's during the primary season by the potential party candidates. All right, next up is going to be 40. All of the following support the claim that political parties are declining, except, all right, so if a lot of you are putting an increase in importance of primaries, the political parties are, if you look at a primaries are becoming more important because we're candidate centered and we're paying more attention to the candidates at the primaries. So that's why that is not an example of them declining. However, a decline in voter turnout, first of all, we have not had a precipitous drop in voter turnout. We've had it ebbs and flows. If you look at 2008, we had a record voter turnout, for example. So if we have a decline in voter turnout, it's just basically because of the candidate, not because of the political parties. And also, you don't know why people aren't voting. It may not have to do with the alignment. All right, next up is 45. Which of the following statements about political parties is correct? If you look at D, the 1932 presidential election essentially established the Democratic Party as we know it. That's the New Deal. That's FDR. That's when we see the period of realignment with the African Americans from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party, which is then going to spur on a change in the Democratic Party because it doesn't really make any sense that you have a party that is made up of African Americans and white segregationists. So that's why you're going to see the start of the change of the Democratic Party. And the last question is 46. Third-party candidates fail to win presidential elections for which of the following reasons? Small parties have difficulty raising money enough to conduct national elections, which is absolutely true. The winner-take-all electoral system tends to favor the major parties, yes, because remember, single-member districts and the fact that if you have a plurality, you just win the entire thing. And then many states prohibit third-party candidates from appearing on the ballot. They don't prohibit it. They just make it much more difficult for a third-party candidate. All right. If you need any more help, please let me know.